bring everyone back. I'm going to introduce the next speaker. The next speaker is Kat O'Loughlin from Campus Ministries here at CMSV, and she's going to discuss her own service experience. So I'm excited to hear from her. Give her a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to start my timer so I don't talk too long because no one needs that. Cool. So yeah, thanks, Emma. So my name's Kat. I've been working here at the college in campus ministry for 4 years now, which is wild. When IPSL asked me if I could speak today, I sent a very nicely worded email back saying no. Yet here I am, so happy. No, but really, I sent an email like, I don't do research. This isn't my field. You guys are the experts. I am not. Have a good day. And Emma sent the most polite email back saying, no, like, you're going to talk. We want you to talk, so call me. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I think what was actually really good for me in this whole process is realizing that research isn't necessarily sitting at your computer desk, scrolling through all these heavy dissertations, but research is in the field. And so, you know, the dissertation writing and the field work are equally important in the research. So my background, I have my undergrad degree in sociology with a focus in social work. And then after that great 4 years of my life, I did Jesuit Volunteer Corps in the Northwest on a Native American reservation, the Northern Cheyenne and Crow. And then that experience really transformed my life, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And so from there, I went to get my master's degree in international peace studies over in Ireland. And there I really focused my research on the colonization of American Indians through the Catholic lens, which is something that, for myself, who I identify as Catholic, was a very heavy topic to study and brought up a lot of my own kind of like prejudices and history and how that tied me to the oppression that we see today. So from there, I got a job here. And this job has really allowed me to share my passion of service with students. So overseeing, you know, week-long service trips, daily outings, working with homelessness agencies, and then helping students connect to longer-term service opportunities. So last summer I spent 6 weeks in Ethiopia, and this summer we have 2 of our students doing the same program. So I'm really excited to be able to kind of be that link in the chain to get students aware that these opportunities exist. So what I'm going to talk about today is what to consider before service, reciprocity, relationships, and trust. So who here has done service in any form? Okay, who's done long-term service? Who's done service in another country or with another culture? Okay, cool, perfect, good, I'm glad. So a lot of what I talk about you'll know, but I think it's kind of just a refreshing way to think about things. So first we're going to talk about kind of the stereotypes of Americans going to foreign countries or cultures to do service, right? That whole idea of the Western savior, I'm coming in, I'm going to save you, you people who don't know anything. So this is an Instagram account, which is hilarious to me. It's called Barbie Savior, and the whole premise is that it's this, you know, white, rich missionary going to Africa, just kind of Africa in general. She never really specifies. Because we all know Africa is just one country with one culture. So she says, when I was a wee child, I remember basking in the gleam of our family Christmas tree, presents abounding, with the haunting melody of Do They Know It's Christmas playing softly in the background. Each year I gazed upon the angel atop the tree, dreaming of one day how I could make that song a thing of the past. Even as a young babe, I found myself wishing for an Africa that fully knew the magic of Christmas. And this year is that year. Thanks to her generous donations, we were able to raise $695,000 to get the shipping container of snow sent straight to my sleepy village. It's a white Christmas after all. So yeah, the next one, you know, Ken and his bros gave this little bro in the making high fives all around, and it made his day. It was pretty clear that this was the best moment of this little guy's life. I took the road less traveled, I forged my own path. I went where no one has gone before, but the question remains, who's going to take my photo? I think this account actually does a really good job of highlighting a lot of issues with international service. It can often become a stereotype in and of itself, and kind of these jokes are founded in real life issues, right? A lot of people think that, and I've had this experience myself, like, oh, because you're a Westerner, you must know so much more than the people you're going to serve, so you're in charge and you do it. And it's like, wait, I don't know how to run a school. Why am all of a sudden I'm given this responsibility? So this is one of my favorite articles. 6-day visit to rural African village completely changes woman's Facebook profile picture. And that's me in college. And I'm sad to say that was one of my profile pictures. That was my first international service trip to Honduras. And I was that woman who changed, not the world, but my Facebook picture. And it was, the more I learned about service and the more I learned about what actually is true service and what isn't service and what is my impact in service, the more I cringed every time this picture came back and I remembered it was my profile picture. So what I've done since then is really researched and experienced a lot about how not to be that person, how not to be the person who's going into a village maybe and you're there for a day and you come out with like a film roll of selfies with these like children. If you're saying you want to do service, what you should be saying is that you want to be making a change, that you want to be working hand in hand with people, not that you want to go in with your own ideas of what is right and the best way to do things and kind of this westernized concept of education or of governing or of teaching, but that you want to learn, that you want it to be a relationship, and that you want to just help make things better, not according to yourself, but according to the needs of the people you're going to. So I think what it really boils down to, reciprocity, relationships, and trust. And we're kind of going, I'm going to kind of fly through this, but backwards. The title just sounded better with the 2 R's and the T, but we're actually going to start with trust. Sorry, just being honest. So trust and respect. I think I just kind of bulleted a few main points, and I'll kind of give some of my own take on it. Knowing, before you're going into service, knowing the history of us versus them, if there is one. My first kind of long-term service experience was with the Northern Cheyenne tribe out in Montana. And I was aware of a little bit of the history. You know, Christopher Columbus came over and he founded America, and that was it, right? What's good? We got it. So I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know what it meant as me, as a white woman, coming on to Native American land, coming onto a reservation. Pair that with, not only as a white woman, as a white Catholic woman. So what that meant, the gravity of that situation, if you go back in history, 1493 was the doctrine of discovery. That's when the Pope, the Catholic Church, said that, we kind of have a war against anyone who's not Catholic, who's not Christian. They're seen as like not real people. So we have to save their souls, right? So this led to this whole national U.S. policy of genocide, of killing the Indian and saving the man, right? And so I'm bringing with me, I wasn't around when the Doctrine of Discovery was written. I didn't sign off on these papers, but that doesn't matter. I'm bringing all of this with me, right? So now in 2010, when I was there, I'm still carrying that history of colonialization and imperialism with me. And so what does that mean to unpack that and to really be able to enter into a true relationship of trust with people I'm trying to serve? And that's a lot. That's a lot to boil down. But just knowing that, being aware of what these kind of like concepts and relationships look like, and that this is still difficult. So JVC Northwest was the organization I worked with. so this is another big thing to unpack. If you look at the missionization of Native Americans, so kind of the forced conversions in the boarding schools, a lot of it was done, most of it was done by the Catholic Church. And then if you look at what orders in Montana, a lot of it was done by the Jesuits themselves. So this was another, and I didn't know a lot of this until we were told a lot of this. So how do you go from a colonizer, someone stripping away rights, to then an organization saying like, yeah, we realized what we did was awful and horrible and wrong and disgusting, and now we want to come in and help. Can that happen? Is that even possible? So when I arrived in Montana, JVC had been on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation for 60 years as volunteers. And their approach, I think there's a lot of work that has to be done, but their approach is very much about reciprocity. So all of the JVC volunteers are working at organizations that are Native-led. So they're no longer coming in and saying like, no, the way you're doing this education system is wrong. We're gonna bring in the westernized, the white way to do it. So that was one big change they did from kind of the beginning of JVC, to say like, we need to understand that like, there are our own cultural entities that we don't understand. We did not grow up on the reservation. We won't know what it is. So we have to take a lot of time to sit back and learn. And something they really stressed is like, it's a year-long program, which realistically is not that long of a time. You're not going to be like fully immersed in this culture in a year. It goes by quick. But pretty much for the first half of that year, you're kind of just there as a visitor, learning and understanding and being invited to sweats or meetings and being invited to council meetings. You're there to learn as much as you can about how my own history, my own upbringing, and my own affiliations with the Catholic Church or with Christianity, that whole history plays into our current day relationships, whether we want to say that or not. So there were moments where we would, go to a sweat and some of the elders did not want us at the sweat. And we had we were invited there, obviously, by community members. And we had to be really respectful of that and be like, yeah, you know what, we get that. We'll leave. And that has to be okay. And eventually it got to the point where my community members and myself forged beautiful relationships, and it was amazing, but it takes time. You can't just go into a new community and assume that you're necessarily wanted there by everyone. And those ideas that, there's a lot of hurt, and there should be. So I would say one thing, researching prior to going. I know some of you guys will be traveling abroad for your service placements or IPSL. You're all going abroad. So I would suggest really researching before you go. If you're going to, I don't know where you may be going, Thailand, researching what is the U.S.'s what's going on? What's the U.S. relationship with Thailand? Has there been any history of conflict? What's the missionary status? What does, it mean for, a Westerner to show up in Thailand and say, oh, I'm here to help? What is kind of the view of NGOs over there? Do that research, have that understanding so that when you're in situations, you can at least know how you're coming off or how you're may seem to people, even if it is your intention is very good and whole and just, understanding your own background and what you're bringing when you get off that plane. Respect the cultural differences. I feel like IPSL does a good job of talking about that, so I don't want to harp on it. But, understand that there's going to be differences. I think that can be a tricky one sometimes. So from my own experience, I was supposed to go to Nepal this summer for a month and a half and help with a project. And when the head of the organization I was supposed to go up with brought this up to their kind of elders or school committee in our terms, they were very much opposed to it. They said, we do not want a woman in charge. They were not open to the idea, it just wasn't going to happen. So to have that guy then call me and say, they don't like that you're a woman, I was like, oh, that's tough to hear in 2017. But also understanding that that's where they are right now, and that's where we are. And so now what we have to do is take time to build this trust. So now I'm going over for potentially 2 weeks just to meet everyone, just to get to know everyone, have these conversations. 2 weeks is like nothing. And then the hope is that I can go again another time for maybe a month, get to know everyone, work alongside teachers, and then maybe next time, go for 7 weeks to do a training, right? So like building up these like little kind of just, this is what I'm about, this is who I am, and how can we meet in the middle? And how can I take your lead in understanding that, you know, we both want to work for the betterment of the school. So that kind of flows nicely into forming these relationships. So in like technical term, initiating contact accomplishes 2 important goals. First, both parties, the volunteer program and the people we're serving, are establishing a relationship, not negotiating a short-term contract. It is expected that they will be establishing a potentially long-lasting cycle, both sharing responsibility for its successes. Each iteration of exchange or gift-giving takes prior generosity or stinginess into account. A dynamic series of encounters is set into motion, one where the inherent asymmetry and play of sentiment in the exchange is also calculated, intended to encourage the possibility of future exchanges and deepening bonds of goodwill and benevolence. So, that's relationships. No, but having that human contact and that human understanding of our dignity as humans before you can kind of dive into this, like, well, what do you need? What do you want? What can we do for you? And also, what can you do for us? If you're going into service looking at it like a contract, it's oftentimes not going to work. Also, that's a very westernized idea that, you know, a contract, I'll give you this, and then our relationship's kind of terminated, and it was good doing business with you. So in a lot of, you know, cultures and scenarios, it's about forming that relationship and not saying that there's a time limit or there's an end time. It's kind of this understanding that, like, we're going to go through this life together, and I hope it can be beneficial for both parties involved, and how can we make that sustained and last. So relationship kind of falls right into reciprocity. So service learning is a philosophy of reciprocity. It's a concerted effort to move from charity to justice, from service to the elimination of need. Reciprocal service learning programs aim to offer a hand up rather than a simple hand out. So that's a lot. I think oftentimes we think of service as a hand up or as a hand out, especially short-term service. So week-longs in, like my picture earlier, I went for a week to an orphanage in Honduras. You know, may not be able to do much in a week-long service project. We do programs called Midnight Runs, which I absolutely love, and it's a night out where we're giving out food, clothing, and conversation to people living on the streets. And that's important. People need to eat, people need clothing, people need that human contact. That's really important. But reciprocity in long-term service is more about working from, you know, let me fulfill your immediate needs, to let's restructure the system. Let's look at the overlying issues about what this is about. So in terms of reciprocity, it really needs to start with the needs expressed by the people you will be serving. So my program I did this past summer was in Ethiopia. And what I did a lot of research before choosing a program to do, because I wanted to make sure, one, that there was no kind of evangelization involved in the program. That's a whole nother issue, but I just was not comfortable doing that. And I also wanted to ensure that what we were doing was wanted by the community. Oftentimes you'll find NGOs or nonprofit organizations will go into these communities and kind of like the first like parody Instagram, like they brought snow over and like no one cares about that. Like they'll go into these communities thinking they're doing such good things, and the community members themselves will say like, wait, but we don't need this. What we need is A, B, or C. And no one's listening to their voices. And so what I wanted to make sure is I found an organization that's mission grew from the needs of the community. So VLM, the program I went with, every year they restructure the volunteers they're looking for based on what the community say they need. So this year in particular, the Daughters of Charity, who are a Catholic organization, they've been there for a long time. And all of the sisters in Ethiopia are Ethiopian sisters. They have schools that serve, well, so Ethiopia is a really interesting kind of snapshot of humanity. It's a predominantly Muslim country, and there's small areas where it's Christian or Catholic. And it's also, the city I lived in, Jimma, was one of the most like beautiful experiences I've ever had, and seeing the Muslim and Christian community coming together and coexisting and working with one another. And I think a good example is this. It's technically a Catholic school, though they don't do any catechism, they don't do any evangelizing. It's Catholic in the sense that the daughters fund the school. The majority of the students are Muslim. The headmaster is a Muslim woman, Ethiopian, and we teach every day with an Ethiopian teacher. And what the community said they needed was English classes. They needed native English speakers. And the reason I was really interested in why. And the reason for that is that in Ethiopia, to continue past 6th grade, our version of 6th grade, you have to pass an English class because all of high school and university is taught in English. So what this means is that the only people who are learning English well enough to continue on are the ones that have money, because they're able to go to the better schools in the capital city or have tutors. So the sisters' mission was to build these schools, especially in the leprosy communities. Ethiopia is one of the few countries left in the world that has leprosy communities. And so all of the children they serve are either the sons or daughters of those with Hansen's disease or leprosy. And these parents can't get government jobs. They're shunned. They live in like the outskirts of the cities. They have to stay to themselves. It's really pretty extreme to see that, you know, there's still leprosy communities that are existing. And there's medication to cure leprosy. So, you know, you can get a bottle of Coke in the most rural Ethiopian village, but you can't get medication. So, drop it over people. Sorry, that was a tangent. So, the idea that service programs have to be built upon a foundation of genuine need is expressed by their recipients. You know, the community members and the teachers working in the school says we need native English speakers to help us understand and to help us teach the teachers how to teach English, and also to help the students to speak English more. Because these students, they're children of, you know, people who are already shunned. If they can't get past 6th grade, they're kind of now just imprisoned in this life of even more poverty. Ownership and responsibility for the project must be clear and shared. The entire school system is owned by the Ethiopians. The Western, you know, VLM has no stake in this organization. Real people must perform hands-on services. So this is saying that for this to exist, it has to be like real humans coming and doing actual human contact, you know, human to human dignity work. workers must come with an open heart and a generous spirit. So for reciprocity to truly work, which means for the service to truly be real, you must ensure that you're going with an open heart and a generous spirit. And I think that's one of the hardest things to kind of ensure, especially if you're running a volunteer program or you're going. You have to actually give a damn. You can't just, and I think we see this a lot, students who want to, boost their resume, so they're going to do service. That's my timer. 1 minute. If you don't give a crap about the people or the issues you're serving, don't go. It doesn't matter. You're not going to do anyone any good. You have to be willing to do the research before you go. You have to be willing to build trust and to go with an organization that already is trusted in the community. And you have to understand that this is a relationship of reciprocity, that you need to put in your 100% and you're going to receive 100% as well. Yeah, sorry, that went by really quick. Sorry. Does anyone have any questions? That was quick, I'm sorry. Yeah.
How do you see duplicating that effort, say, in Western society, you have positive cultural growth, certainly in the classroom, but how do you see expanding that?
Expanding the sense of like
Your family, community, equality?
Mm-hmm. That's a big question. It is a trick question, I know. You're tricky. I think oftentimes it's easier to kind of put those ideals into practice when we know it's kind of a short term, right? Like, oh, you're going to volunteer for 6 weeks or a year. Make sure you have open heart and generous spirit, and you're entering into a human relationship. And then when you come back home, you treat your mother or your best friend like whatever, or people you pass on the street. And it's like, well, wait a second. The whole way we live our lives needs to be a life of service and generosity. It doesn't matter if we're abroad and it looks really good, or if we're here on the streets of New York. That was a trick. Yeah.
You said that for some reason the people who have Advocacy aren't getting why do you think that is?
Because the government doesn't care. Because they're poor. So why would they get help?
I mean, because it probably costs more money to have homeless people than to actually help them and contribute to society.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about, and I can really only speak to the city that I know in Ethiopia, and I don't even know, like, I'm not an expert on, I would never say that. But the government is as corrupt as anything. A lot of times, any money that comes in from nonprofits, they're pocketing themselves. Any medication that comes in, the government's taking the medication, right? So it doesn't, they don't care. Government doesn't care. Often. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that in the beginning how you kind of made light of the fact of some of the grand intentions people might have going in. And obviously through your life and through what you've done, you've put a lot of thought into what you'd like to do with your life, understanding who you are. Yeah, I think you made that point very clear that there's a conflict there. So how do you deal with the privilege that you were born into while you're trying to serve people who obviously weren't born into that yet you do care? Like the JVCs, for instance, like they're the ones who did create this condition. Our church did, right? Our country did. But yet, how do you reconcile that with what you do and what you like to do?
Yeah. That I'm still learning, but I think when I came back from that trip to Honduras, I, was a warrior for justice, and I was going to change the world. And I remember I marched into my advisor's office in college, and I was like, I'm dropping out of school, and I'm going back to Honduras and working at that orphanage, and I'm going to save all the babies. And he laughed at me. He's like, sit down, child. Calm down. And I was like, no, this is ridiculous. I don't deserve this education. This is absurd. And he was like, okay, you need help. But first, he said, you were lucky enough to be born into this privilege. You were. Like, none of us chose where we were born. I didn't choose to be born in America to the family I was born to. He said, but you're not going to be able to help anyone by giving up your education to go live in an orphanage in Honduras. He said, you need to study the structural injustices and then use that knowledge to help. And I think for me, that helped me kind of understand more how to. And I think it's still kind of that journey of how do I use my privileges and my background and my education to get these stories out that need to be told, and to walk hand in hand with my brothers and sisters who maybe weren't born into this specific life, but that have no more or less dignity than I have.
Thank you.
Oh, we have one more question.
Oh, one more question. Sorry.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
So you've spoken now about 3 really different types of service that you've done. Specifically here in New York, you talked about doing urban outreach with midnight runs. You talked about the work you did in Montana, and then you talked about Ethiopia. So I guess it's not necessarily a question, or it's not a good question, but I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about the differences of, I guess, importance placed on each location. So, like, what is necessary to do urban outreach? What is necessary to do, like, community-based outreach? What is necessary to do, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that's a whole course of study. Which I don't think we have time for. Literally, you can take classes. I'll give you some good ones. But I think the common denominator in all of it, which I'll speak to, is something I've already said, that Martin Luther King Jr. has a speech which all of my students know very well because I play it like 8 times a year and I listen to it in my office. And it's called the Drum Major Instinct. And one line of it, which I absolutely love, I think really gets to the whole baseline of service. And he's talking about, like, you don't need anything necessarily to serve other than a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. And I think just entering into these experiences kind of with, you know, all this background knowledge, but also at its baseline with love and with understanding and with saying, like, I'm no better and I don't know more, and what can you teach me and what can I teach you and how can we grow together? I think whether you're urban or rural, international or intercultural, being open and being loving.